If you are currently engaging with this content, it signifies a distinct characteristic about you. Most individuals never embark on the introspective journey to uncover the underlying reasons for their persistent state of stagnation. However, you uniquely perceive a fundamental imbalance. An inherent internal force consistently impedes your progress, subtly consuming your days without significant accomplishment. This pervasive influence is identified as procrastination. It possesses the insidious power to dismantle more aspirations and ambitions than any outright failure ever could. Yet this formidable adversary is surmountable. Within this multi-part instructional series, I intend to unveil 13 profound insights or truths designed to disrupt and ultimately dismantle this cycle of delay. It is imperative that you maintain unwavering focus. Do not divert your attention. The version of yourself that you aspire to become resides just beyond the comprehension and application of these principles. Let us commence by deconstructing a prevalent and deeply ingrained misconception, the notion that you are merely lazy. If this assessment held any validity, it is highly improbable that you would currently be investing your time in absorbing this material. Your engagement itself is evidence of your inherent concern and desire for change. Consequently, the pertinent question arises, why do you continually defer tasks? Why do you meticulously formulate an ideal daily agenda, only to squander hours engaged in activities devoid of genuine significance? From a naturalistic perspective, procrastination functions as an intricate alarm system within your cognitive framework. When you actively circumvent a particular task or responsibility, it is because a segment of your psyche perceives that undertaking as inherently perilous, emotionally taxing, or a catalyst for unwelcome change. Your tendency to delay is not an indication of personal feebleness. Rather, it is a manifestation of your mind's protective instincts, striving to shield you from perceived risks. Perhaps a past educational experience instilled in you a profound apprehension of making errors. Alternatively, a previous setback might have conditioned your brain to instinctively evade any situation that could potentially reintroduce emotional pain. Therefore, each instance you find yourself postponing a chore, deferring a communication, or delaying a decision, it is crucial to pose the introspective question: what specific threat is my mind endeavoring to safeguard me from in this present moment? Take a genuine pause. Reflect on the most recent item you chose to postpone. Direct your attention to the physical sensation within your chest. Did it manifest as a dense constriction, a hollow sensation of dread, or perhaps a surge of anxious energy? This visceral response is your brain's intrinsic warning signal. The initial stride toward liberation involves actively recognizing and interpreting this signal, rather than succumbing to self-condemnation for perceived laziness. The vast majority of individuals remain oblivious to this vital internal communication. Upon closer examination of virtually every instance of delay, you will invariably unearth an underlying current of fear. This fear can range from subtle to profound, yet its presence is constant. It could be the apprehension of appearing foolish, the dread of an unsuccessful outcome, the anxiety of selecting the incorrect path, or even the paradoxical fear of achieving success, knowing it might elevate expectations placed upon you by others. Ancient wisdom suggests that anything you deliberately refuse to confront will exert its influence over you from the shadows. However, when you courageously bring your fears into the illuminating light of conscious awareness, their power to immobilize significantly diminishes. Therefore, implement this strategy. The next occasion you find yourself actively avoiding a task, momentarily halt your actions. Ask yourself with genuine curiosity, what is the true nature of my apprehension? Articulate this fear aloud, even if it feels inherently absurd or trivial. For example, you might verbalize, I am afraid that if I attempt this, I will disappoint everyone around me, or I am concerned that I will discover I am not competent enough. While you might experience a fleeting sense of embarrassment, you will simultaneously perceive a noticeable alleviation of mental burden. Here is a concise exercise. Acquire a writing instrument and a sheet of paper. Inscribe the task you are currently procrastinating on. Beneath it, meticulously list every single fear you associate with that task. The act of externalizing these fears by writing them down significantly diminishes their potency. They cease to be amorphous, menacing shadows and transform into concrete, manageable statements. Consider this illustrative example. Sana consistently dreaded delivering presentations before her classmates. Consequently, she habitually neglected adequate preparation. One day she transcribed her innermost fear. I am afraid people will mock me if I make a mistake. The mere act of visually apprehending this fear on paper allowed her to recognize the universality of such anxieties among her peers. While she never developed a fondness for public speaking, she no longer experienced the paralyzing paralysis that previously afflicted her. The act of confronting and naming your fear is, in itself, the inaugural act of bravery. You survey your list of impending obligations, and the sheer volume evokes the sensation of gazing at an insurmountable peak. Complete my dissertation. Achieve physical fitness. Organize the entire residence. Your mind reacts with panic, leading to complete inaction. Yet the fundamental laws of nature reveal that monumental achievements are merely the aggregate of countless, smaller, discrete actions. The mountain is in essence a cognitive construct, an illusion of overwhelming scale. The transformative approach. Deconstruct your task into progressively smaller components until the very first step feels almost ridiculously simple. Instead of contemplating an entire essay, commit to writing a single sentence. Rather than envisioning a 5-mile run, simply put on your running shoes. Instead of organizing the entire house, focus on tidying a single drawer. The human brain is inherently predisposed to favor momentum over undue pressure. Once you successfully execute that initial, minuscule step, the subsequent progression becomes significantly less daunting. A practical illustration. An individual harbored a desire to improve his physical condition, but the concept of attending a gymnasium filled him with trepidation. He initiated his journey by simply walking around his residential block every day. After a week, he incorporated 1 minute of jogging, which soon extended to 2 minutes. 3 months later, he was consistently completing 5-kilometer runs. The entirety of his progress originated from the deliberate process of shrinking the mountain. If the initial step still feels overwhelming, further reduce its scope. The overarching objective is to initiate movement, not to attain immediate perfection. You might characterize yourself as a perfectionist, or perhaps, more subtly, you harbor an unspoken desire for every endeavor to commence and conclude flawlessly. This aspiration often serves as the primary impediment to actually beginning. You perpetually await the impeccably conceived plan, the perfectly opportune moment, the ideal emotional state. However, perfect is merely fear cloaked in an elegant disguise. As the poet Rilke penned, "You must have chaos in your soul to give birth to a dancing star." If you genuinely intend to accomplish anything substantive, you must grant yourself the explicit permission to initiate the process imperfectly. The paradigm shift. Embark on your project with the full understanding that its initial manifestation will be unrefined. Produce a chaotic, unpolished draft. Create a preliminary sketch replete with errors. Engage in an awkward, hesitant first conversation. No individual's initial attempt at anything truly groundbreaking is a masterpiece. Every significant work of art, innovation, or achievement invariably begins in an unappealing, raw state. A brief exercise. Select a task you are currently avoiding. Set a timer for precisely 7 minutes. Dedicate yourself to working on this task without any concern for the quality of the outcome. Upon the timer's expiration, you will possess something tangible, something upon which you can subsequently build. A genuine anecdote. David harbored an ambition to launch a podcast but continually deferred action, waiting for the perfect concept to materialize. He eventually compelled himself to record an episode on any topic, even addressing his own anxieties about the recording process itself. The resulting episode was far from stellar, yet he gleaned more valuable insights from that imperfect recording than from months of passive waiting. Beginning in a messy, unpolished fashion is often the most direct route to achieving something truly remarkable. You have now assimilated the initial 4 truths, presented as if nature itself were bestowing upon you a set of keys. Procrastination is an intrinsic warning mechanism, not an inherent character flaw. Fear's coercive power dissipates when you articulate and acknowledge its presence. The formidable mountain is merely an aggregation of individual stones. Commence by moving just one. Imperfect beginnings consistently triumph over flawless, yet unrealized intentions. However, this constitutes merely the nascent stage of our exploration. In the subsequent installment, you will uncover an additional 5 truths that elude the awareness of most individuals. Truths that fundamentally distinguish those who merely wish for success from those who actively achieve it. Should any of these truths resonate deeply with you, I encourage you to express your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe to this series. Because in part 2, the insidious comfort trap, and a transformative ritual that possesses the potential to alter the trajectory of your life, await your discovery. Do not permit yourself to miss it. The forthcoming lesson is the catalyst that can awaken your authentic existence. Herein lies a difficult reality. Comfort, more profoundly than fear, is responsible for the demise of countless aspirations. There is an inherent ease in adhering to the familiar, even if that familiarity is characterized by monotony or discontent, because your mind finds solace and security within established routines. Each instance where you consciously opt to circumvent a demanding situation, instead gravitating towards immediate gratification, be it through passive entertainment like streaming services, endless scrolling through social media feeds, indulging in unhealthy snacks, or reverting to ingrained, unproductive habits, you are inadvertently fortifying a minuscule, yet remarkably resilient psychological tether that serves to keep you confined. From a philosophical perspective, one might infer that the very essence of existence compels you to realize your authentic self. This profound self-actualization remains utterly unattainable as long as you persist in seeking refuge beneath a metaphorical shroud of perceived safety and comfort. It is imperative to engage in a rigorous introspection, posing the crucial inquiry: am I undertaking this particular action because it intrinsically holds significance and aligns with my deeper purpose? Or am I merely pursuing it because it offers a sense of security and familiarity? Authentic personal development and profound transformation invariably transpire precisely at the precipice of what is conventionally deemed comfortable. You will forever remain oblivious to the full scope of your potential, the individual you are truly capable of becoming, if you perpetually shy away from the inherent risks associated with venturing beyond the confines of your established comfort zone. Consider the narrative of Maya. For an extended period, Maya harbored a deep-seated dissatisfaction with her professional occupation. Despite this profound unhappiness, she remained entrenched in her role for numerous years, primarily because the environment was undemanding and offered a predictable sense of ease. It was only when she deliberately compelled herself to pursue more challenging professional avenues, actively seeking out and applying for positions that demanded greater effort and offered increased complexity, that she underwent a profound realization. This epiphany revealed the extent to which she had intellectually and personally outgrown her former existence, rendering her previous life utterly inadequate for her evolving aspirations. The fundamental takeaway from Maya's experience is this: if your current life trajectory feels stagnant, characterized by a pervasive sense of inertia, it is prudent to meticulously examine those areas where you have perhaps become overly complacent or excessively comfortable. The 6th principle underscores a critical distinction. Established rituals possess a power far exceeding transient motivation. There is a common human tendency to passively await the arrival of a motivational surge, to postpone action until that elusive feeling of inspiration materializes. However, motivation, much like meteorological phenomena, is inherently capricious. It may manifest vibrantly one day, only to dissipate entirely the next, leaving you adrift. The profound insight here lies in the strategic construction of modest, yet profoundly impactful, daily rituals. These rituals are designed to serve as steadfast anchors, grounding you and enabling consistent action irrespective of your fluctuating emotional or psychological state. Philosophers and proponents of disciplined living have long recognized the intrinsic potency embedded within simple, recurring routines. These are not merely arbitrary actions. Rather, they are carefully chosen rituals that effectively communicate a powerful signal to your subconscious mind. The time for commencement is now. This could manifest in various forms: The deliberate act of brewing a specific type of tea before embarking on a writing session, the conscious lacing of your athletic footwear prior to commencing a brisk walk, or the systematic clearing and organization of your workspace before engaging in professional duties. The profound significance resides not necessarily in the subsequent activity itself, but rather in the consistent execution of the preceding ritual. The inherent strength of ritual lies in its capacity to compel action, even when your internal inclination to act is entirely absent. In a perpetual contest, rituals consistently triumph over fleeting motivation. Here's a practical challenge. Identify a specific task that you consistently find yourself deferring or actively avoiding. Subsequently, devise a concise, 2-minute ritual that you will commit to performing invariably before initiating that task. This could involve something as simple as lighting a scented candle, engaging in a brief series of therapeutic stretches, or donning a particular pair of noise-canceling headphones. After consistently adhering to this practice for approximately 1 week, you will observe a remarkable transformation. Your brain will begin to anticipate and associate the ritual with the subsequent task, rendering the initial act of starting significantly less arduous and more automatic. A pervasive human tendency involves waiting for an optimal psychological state, often articulated as, "I'll commence this when I feel sufficiently inspired." However, a more insightful perspective would find such an approach rather amusingly naive. True understanding reveals that action itself is the progenitor of feeling, not the reverse. Even the most minuscule step, whether it's embarking on a short walk, composing a single sentence, or completing a brief phone call, generates a discernible ripple effect within your cognitive framework. The very act of doing, even if initially performed imperfectly or with considerable struggle, gradually accumulates momentum. This nascent momentum, in turn, fosters a burgeoning sense of self-assurance and capability. Consider this real-world illustration. Adam found himself mired in a prolonged state of creative paralysis for several weeks. He consciously compelled himself to engage in writing for a mere 3 minutes. The initial minute was an agonizing ordeal, characterized by intense resistance. Yet by the onset of the 4th minute, a palpable resurgence of energy manifested, enabling him to complete the entire task without further interruption. The core principle is clear: initiate movement, and your mental state will inevitably align itself with your physical actions. A particularly poignant and potentially uncomfortable question for self-reflection. Is your current pattern of procrastination rooted in the pursuit of a dream that is authentically your own, or are you inadvertently striving to fulfill the expectations and aspirations of others? It is a universally acknowledged truth that delaying tasks lacking genuine personal resonance is remarkably effortless. Individuals in positions of influence, parents, educators, even close acquaintances, frequently inundate your consciousness with their preconceived notions and expectations. If the task at hand does not genuinely originate from your own intrinsic desires and values, you will almost invariably seek to circumvent it. A profound statement encapsulates this: no price is too exorbitant to pay for the invaluable privilege of true self-possession. Therefore, meticulously scrutinize your current objectives. Discern which among them are genuinely reflective of your deepest aspirations, and decisively relinquish those that are not. The narrative of Priya serves as an illuminating example. Priya dedicated several years to the demanding curriculum of law school, primarily to fulfill the expectations and desires of her family. Throughout this period, she experienced a profound absence of intrinsic motivation. Upon finally transitioning to the pursuit of art, which was her authentic passion, she discovered an unparalleled capacity for sustained effort, dedicating countless hours to her craft with absolutely no inclination towards procrastination. The undeniable lesson derived from Priya's experience is this: it is remarkably simple to postpone or defer activities that you secretly harbor resentment towards. When you consciously elect to forge your own unique path, aligned with your authentic self, the act of taking action transforms from an onerous burden into a genuine gift. Deadlines, when wielded effectively, can serve as exceptionally potent tools for driving progress and accountability. However, for a significant number of individuals, they tragically metamorphose into instruments of self-inflicted psychological harm. The common pattern involves setting an excessively stringent deadline, subsequently failing to meet it, and then spiraling into a debilitating vortex of guilt and self-reproach, ultimately leading to the complete abandonment of the endeavor. A more enlightened perspective would advocate for viewing deadlines as compassionate navigational aids. Should you inadvertently miss a deadline, the appropriate response is not self-flagellation, but rather a pragmatic adjustment of your existing plan. The imperative is to not surrender. Instead, cultivate the practice of establishing more manageable, adaptable timelines. It is crucial to internalize the understanding that every single step taken, no matter how small, contributes meaningfully to the overall journey. Consider the real-life scenario of Emma. Emma harbored an ambitious goal of completing her novel by the arrival of summer. Regrettably, she failed to achieve this target and was on the precipice of abandoning her literary aspirations entirely. Instead of succumbing to despair, she wisely opted to implement a revised strategy. She established a more modest yet consistent weekly writing deadline. Consequently, she successfully completed her book several months later, a testament to the power of gradual, persistent effort. Deadlines should function as catalysts for forward momentum, serving to propel you onward, rather than acting as oppressive forces designed to crush your spirit. Cultivate a compassionate attitude toward yourself as you embark on the arduous ascent towards your aspirations. You have now assimilated insights from 5 additional fundamental truths, each representing a significant stride away from the insidious snare of procrastination. However, your journey of understanding is far from complete. In the forthcoming 3rd installment, you will be introduced to the concluding quartet of essential truths. These particular revelations delve into the critical aspects of seeing ventures through to their culmination, cultivating the profound capacity for self-forgiveness in the face of setbacks, and ultimately attaining a genuine sense of liberation. It is imperative that you remain engaged, for the subsequent lesson holds the potential to illuminate and integrate all preceding concepts into a cohesive understanding. It is an inescapable truth that everyone experiences momentary lapses. You will, at some juncture, miss a scheduled commitment, regress into ingrained unproductive habits, or succumb to paralysis when confronted with formidable challenges. These occurrences are an inherent facet of the human condition. However, a more profound philosophy would assert that the sole genuine failure lies in the absolute refusal to recommence. Do not permit a singular misstep to serve as a convenient justification for capitulating entirely. Extend to yourself the grace of complete and immediate forgiveness, devoid of any theatrical embellishment or prolonged self-recrimination. Nevertheless, it is equally crucial to ensure that this act of forgiveness does not devolve into an unearned license for future complacency. Instead, extract valuable lessons from each and every deviation from your intended path. Subsequently, rise with renewed resolve and continue your forward trajectory. Let's examine Rena's experience. Rena had a firm intention of engaging in daily morning meditation, but found herself skipping an entire week. She was on the verge of abandoning the practice altogether until a crucial realization dawned upon her. 1 week of missed sessions did not, in fact, invalidate or erase the cumulative effort she had previously invested. She extended forgiveness to herself, but also proactively established a new behavioral trigger. Her alarm clock, previously a mere wake-up call, was repurposed to serve as her explicit reminder for meditation. Mistakes fundamentally are not definitive condemnations, but rather invaluable sources of feedback. The overarching objective is consistent advancement, not an unattainable state of flawlessness. Boredom, paradoxically, often acts as the primary propellant for procrastination. Yet a more astute observation reveals that even the most arduous and unappealing task can become considerably more manageable if you can identify a singular element within it, just one, that manages to ignite a spark of genuine curiosity. If you harbor a deep-seated aversion to a particular task, pose this question to yourself. What is one aspect of this task that I am not yet privy to, that I genuinely don't know? Perhaps it involves acquiring a minuscule new skill, experimenting with an innovative technique, or discovering a novel approach to infuse an element of enjoyment into the process. The objective of curiosity is not necessarily to fundamentally alter the task itself, but rather to strategically redirect your cognitive focus. A compelling real-world anecdote involves Liam, who harbored a profound dread for his accounting responsibilities. He consciously issued himself a challenge to unearth one peculiar or intriguing fact related to accounting every single day. This seemingly insignificant spark of curiosity had a remarkable effect. It not only enabled him to complete his routine tasks with increased efficiency, but also, quite unexpectedly, served as the genesis for a novel idea for his own burgeoning side hustle. Curiosity, in its essence, is a potent form of energy. A mere modicum of it is often all that is required to transmute mundane drudgery into an engaging, almost gamified experience. A common human strategy for self-motivation involves vividly visualizing the anticipated rewards upon the successful completion of a task. Perhaps a new professional opportunity, an improved physical physique, or an enhanced sense of personal liberty. However, a more sophisticated and arguably more effective motivational tactic is to contemplate the profound personal cost incurred if you persist in your current state of inertia. Envision yourself 1 year from now, or even 5 years hence, trapped within the identical unproductive cycle, rehashing the same tired excuses, enduring the same emotional pain, and burdened by the same persistent regrets. Permit this potent, fear-inducing mental image to galvanize you into decisive action. The narrative of Carlos illustrates this principle vividly. Carlos harbored a long-standing aspiration to author a book, yet he perpetually deferred the undertaking for numerous years. One particular evening, he found himself contemplating his future self at the age of 50, burdened by the profound regret of not having commenced his writing journey sooner. This chilling premonition of future regret ultimately proved more compelling than the immediate comfort offered by procrastination. Therefore, do not solely pursue the allure of pleasure. Instead, actively retreat from the palpable pain associated with remaining perpetually stagnant. Regret, when harnessed appropriately, can serve as a powerful internal fire. Utilize it as such. It is an unfortunate observation that a significant proportion of individuals never bring their initiated endeavors to a successful conclusion. They often progress to a considerable extent, only to experience a gradual dissipation of energy and subsequently drift away from their original intentions. The cunning strategy? Conclude on a smaller scale. Refrain from anticipating a monumental conclusion. Conclude your day with the successful completion of a solitary item. A single page composed, a solitary drawer tidied, one phone call successfully placed. Each minuscule accomplishment fortifies your identity as an achiever. The more tasks you bring to fruition, the less arduous it becomes to tackle and complete more substantial undertakings. This is an undeniable fact. Leah consistently struggled with task completion. She instituted a personal guideline. Invariably conclude each day with the absolute fulfillment of a task, no matter how insignificant. Within a month, she successfully brought to completion her first major undertaking in numerous years. Even the act of finishing minor tasks fundamentally reconfigures your neurological pathways. You evolve into an individual who consistently follows through, and this attribute is paramount. Now the knowledge is yours. You have confronted 13 fundamental truths that the majority of individuals evade throughout their entire existence. You have assimilated the understanding that procrastination serves as an indicator, not a transgression, that comfort functions as a confinement, yet established routines liberate you, that errors do not signify the absolute end, and that inquisitiveness, probity, and the completion of small tasks profoundly alter everything. However, the potency of these truths is directly proportional to the actions you undertake. Most will merely acknowledge and continue scrolling. But if you implement even one of these principles into your daily practice, your life will undergo a transformation, incrementally, day by day, and then in a sudden, comprehensive shift. Nature posited that the most exceptional act in the world is to genuinely live your own life, fully aware, unburdened by the apprehension of exertion, unperturbed by the presence of imperfection. Do not merely acquire knowledge. Undergo a metamorphosis. The future you aspire to is already awaiting your arrival. It is attainable if you persist in your forward trajectory. Even when circumstances are challenging, even when the inclination to retreat arises, perfection is not a prerequisite. You simply need to recommence repeatedly, incessantly, until your newly formed self becomes your singular, authentic self. Do not permit this pivotal moment to escape your grasp. This signifies your genesis. Nature's ultimate challenge, the 30-day procrastination rebellion. Your progression to this juncture places you within the elite 1%. The vast majority of individuals never even perceive their own procrastination, much less confront it directly. But what if you possess the capacity to transform all 13 truths into an unshakable habit and witness tangible change? Not at some indeterminate future point, but immediately? Herein lies nature's ultimate challenge, a recompense for persevering to the conclusion. The 30-day rebellion. For the ensuing 30 days, identify one specific domain where procrastination exerts its dominance over your life. Each morning, deliberately recall these fundamental truths, particularly the one that resonates most acutely. Subsequently, prior to the arrival of noon, execute the most minuscule possible action directed toward your objective. Not an enormous leap, merely a single microscopic stride. Every single day you might articulate a sentence, dispatch one email, venture outdoors for a brief perambulation, record a voice memo, or confront a minor apprehension. Meticulously document your actions. Should you miss a day, extend self-forgiveness and recommence. No dramatic overreaction is necessary. Here is the ultimate reward. After 30 days, two distinct outcomes will be evident. Firstly, you will possess irrefutable evidence that personal transformation is indeed achievable for you, not exclusively for others. Secondly, you will discern a tangible shift within your cognitive processes. The internal voice that once softly urged, "Wait," will begin to gently prompt, "Just begin." Momentum will unequivocally become your ally. Authentic narratives confirm this. Individuals who have engaged in this straightforward rebellion report the successful completion of long-deferred undertakings, the cultivation of genuine self-assurance, and, most significantly, the personal validation that they are no longer powerless. If you choose to derive nothing else from this video, undertake this singular challenge. Nature believed that life bestows its rewards upon the select few who possess the audacity to act repeatedly. This is your reward for having reached the conclusion. A renewed existence that commences with a solitary action, reiterated until the entrenched pattern of old habits finally shatters. Your 30-day period commences today. If you are present at this point, you are already distinct. The majority of people never endeavor to ascertain the underlying rationale for their stagnant existence. But you perceive an inherent incongruity, an internal force consistently impeding your progress, silently squandering your days. That force is unequivocally termed procrastination, and it devastates more aspirations than failure ever could. However, it is conquerable. In this series, I will impart 13 profound truths capable of disrupting this cycle. Do not avert your gaze. Do not navigate away. The individual you are destined to become resides on the other side of this. Let us dismantle the most ancient falsehood. You are simply indolent. If that assertion held true, you would not be engaged in viewing this content. You possess a genuine concern. Therefore, why do you persistently defer tasks? Why do you meticulously plan a flawless day, only to squander hours engaged in unproductive activities? Nature would contend that procrastination functions as your mind's internal alert mechanism. When you actively circumvent something, it is because a component of your being genuinely believes that the task is perilous or agonizing or will necessitate a fundamental alteration within you. You do not delay due to inherent weakness. You delay because your mind is actively striving to shield you from perceived hazards. Perhaps you encountered an educator who instilled in you a fear of being incorrect. Perhaps you experienced a singular failure, and your brain subsequently learned to evade any situation that could potentially inflict similar harm again. Therefore, each instance you evade a responsibility a communication, or a decision, pose the question to yourself. From what is my mind attempting to safeguard me at this very moment? A genuine moment for reflection. Recall the last item you postponed. Observe the sensation within your chest. Was it a dense constriction, a sinking emptiness, a surge of anxious energy? That is your brain's alarm. The initial step toward liberation is to heed that signal instead of self-condemning for perceived laziness. Most individuals never apprehend this crucial message. You can investigate every instance of delay, and invariably you will uncover fear. Sometimes substantial, sometimes negligible, but perpetually present. Fear of appearing foolish, fear of experiencing failure, fear of making an erroneous selection, even fear of achieving success because then others will inevitably expect more from you. Nature elucidated that anything you refuse to acknowledge will exert control over you from the shadows. However, when you bring fear into the illumination, its power diminishes. Therefore, attempt this exercise. The next time you find yourself avoiding a task, pause momentarily. Ask yourself, what am I genuinely apprehensive of? Articulate it aloud, even if it feels absurd. I am terrified that if I attempt this, I will disappoint everyone. I am concerned that I will come to realize I am not sufficiently capable. You might experience a fleeting sense of embarrassment, but simultaneously, you will feel a palpable lightness, a swift challenge. Procure a sheet of paper, inscribe the task you are currently postponing, and beneath it, meticulously list every fear you harbor regarding it. Witnessing it in written form diminishes the fear's potency. It ceases to be an elusive shadow. It is merely a declarative statement. For instance, Sana harbored a profound dread of presenting before her class. She consistently neglected to prepare. One particular day, she committed to writing the statement, "I'm afraid people will mock me if I make a mistake." The mere act of articulating this apprehension on paper brought about a profound realization for her. Countless others harbored identical sentiments. Though she didn't particularly relish the act of public speaking, that paralyzing fear no longer held her captive. Identify your fear. This simple action represents the initial stride of courage. You cast your gaze upon your extensive to-do list, and it looms before you like an insurmountable peak. Complete my dissertation. Achieve physical fitness. Systematize the household. Your mind descends into a state of panic, leading to complete inaction. However, the natural world intrinsically understands that monumental endeavors are merely composites of innumerable minor components, meticulously assembled. The mountain itself is an illusion, a deceptive perception. The method: deconstruct your task into such minute increments that the very first step feels almost ridiculously simple. Pen a solitary sentence rather than attempting to compose the entire essay. Slip on your shoes. Do not endeavor to run 5 miles immediately. Organize a single drawer, not the entirety of your dwelling. The brain thrives on momentum, not on overwhelming pressure. Once you initiate that microscopic action, maintaining progress becomes significantly less challenging. Consider a real-world illustration. A gentleman harbored aspirations of improving his physical condition, yet gym environments instilled a sense of dread within him. He commenced his journey by simply perambulating around his residential block each day. After the span of a week, he incrementally introduced a minute of jogging, which he then extended to 2 minutes. Merely 3 months subsequently, he was effortlessly completing 5K runs. This entire transformation originated from the deliberate process of diminishing the perceived magnitude of the mountain. Should the initial phase appear daunting, further reduce its scope. The ultimate objective is forward motion, not absolute flawlessness. Perhaps you characterize yourself as a perfectionist, or it could be that you secretly harbor the fervent desire for every single project to commence and conclude without a single imperfection. This underlying aspiration is precisely why you never initiate anything. You perpetually await the ideal blueprint, the opportune moment, the perfect frame of mind. Yet perfection is merely fear masquerading in an elaborate disguise. Nature once inscribed, "You need chaos in your soul to give birth to a dancing star." If your ambition is to accomplish anything of tangible significance, you must grant yourself the liberty to commence imperfectly. The transformative insight: Embark on your project with the full awareness that it will inevitably be unrefined. Produce a chaotic, jumbled draft. Create a preliminary sketch riddled with inaccuracies. Engage in an awkward, hesitant inaugural conversation. No one's initial attempt is a stroke of genius. Everyone's most exceptional work invariably begins in an unpolished state. A brief exercise. Select a task you have been consciously avoiding. Set a timer for precisely 7 minutes. Work on this task without any concern for the eventual outcome. Upon the expiration of the timer, you will possess something tangible, a foundation upon which to build. A genuine anecdote. David harbored the desire to launch a podcast, but he continuously postponed its inception, waiting for the elusive, perfect concept. He eventually compelled himself to record an episode on any topic whatsoever, even his own apprehension about the recording process itself. It was far from stellar, but he gleaned more valuable insights from that subpar episode than he did from months of passive anticipation. Embracing a messy start is the pathway to achieving something truly remarkable. You have now assimilated the first quartet of fundamental truths that the natural world would present to you like a set of invaluable keys. Procrastination is a protective mechanism, not an inherent defect. Fear relinquishes its hold once you articulate it. The mountain is simply an aggregation of small stones. Begin by moving just one. Imperfect beginnings consistently triumph over flawless intentions. However, this is merely the prologue. In the subsequent segment, you will unearth 5 additional truths that the majority of individuals never apprehend. And these are precisely what differentiate those who merely yearn from those who achieve victory. Should any of these profound insights resonate with you, please express your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe. Because in the second part, the insidious comfort trap and the transformative ritual that possesses the potential to alter everything await your discovery. Do not let it elude you. The forthcoming lesson is the one that will awaken your authentic existence. Herein lies an uncomfortable reality. Comfort extinguishes more aspirations than fear ever will. It is effortless to acquiesce to what is familiar, even if it is monotonous or distressing, because your mind cherishes the perceived security of routine. Each instance you evade a challenge and gravitate towards comfort, be it binge-watching streaming services, mindlessly scrolling through social media, indulging in snacks, or reverting to ingrained habits, you inadvertently fortify a minuscule chain that maintains your captivity. Nature would emphatically declare, "Become who you are." This self-actualization is unattainable while you remain ensconced beneath a pervasive blanket of comfort. Pose this introspective query to yourself. Am I undertaking this endeavor because it holds genuine significance, or simply because it offers a sense of security? Personal growth materializes at the very periphery of one's comfort zone. You will never fully comprehend your potential if you perpetually shy away from venturing beyond the confines of safety. A narrative. Maya detested her employment, yet she persevered in it for numerous years because it was undemanding. It was only when she deliberately forced herself to seek more challenging professional opportunities that she grasped the extent to which she had outgrown her former life. The profound takeaway: if your life feels stagnant, meticulously examine where you have become excessively comfortable. Sixth, rituals possess greater potency than mere motivation. You habitually await the arrival of motivation, but motivation is akin to meteorological phenomena, present one day, absent the next. The fundamental secret lies in cultivating minor rituals that serve as steadfast anchors, irrespective of your emotional state. The natural world implicitly understood the profound efficacy of uncomplicated routines. Rituals that unequivocally signal to your brain, "Now I commence." This could manifest as brewing a cup of tea prior to engaging in writing, or meticulously lacing your shoes before embarking on a stroll, or systematically decluttering your workspace before commencing professional duties. The ritual itself holds greater significance than the activity that subsequently transpires. The intrinsic power of ritual is its capacity to function even when you lack the inclination to participate. Rituals consistently surpass motivation in effectiveness. A swift challenge. Select a task that you persistently evade. Institute a 2-minute ritual that you will unfailingly execute before commencing this task. Perhaps light a candle, perform some stretches, or put on headphones. After the duration of 1 week, your brain will anticipate this ritual, rendering the act of starting considerably easier. The majority of individuals passively await the ideal emotional state. When I feel inspired, I will begin. However, nature would undoubtedly find such an approach amusing. It understood that action engenders feeling, not the inverse. Even the most diminutive step, a brief walk, a single sentence composed, a phone call initiated, generates a ripple effect within your cognitive processes. The very act of doing, even if executed poorly, builds momentum. That accumulated momentum, in turn, fosters confidence. A concrete illustration. Adam felt ensnared in a rut for several weeks. He compelled himself to dedicate a mere 3 minutes to writing. The initial minute was an ordeal. By the 4th minute, his energy had been fully restored. He completed the entire task in a single, uninterrupted session. Initiate movement, and your mind will invariably follow. A poignant inquiry. Are you procrastinating because you are pursuing your own aspirations or those imposed by others? It is remarkably simple to defer that which you do not genuinely desire. Parents, educators, and even acquaintances inundate your mind with a myriad of expectations. If the task at hand is not genuinely yours, you will perpetually circumvent it. Nature declared that no cost is too exorbitant to pay for the profound privilege of self-ownership. Scrutinize your objectives. Which ones are authentically yours? Discard the remainder. A narrative. Priya devoted years to legal education solely because her family desired it. She never experienced genuine motivation. Upon her eventual transition to the arts, which was her true calling, she found herself dedicating countless hours to her craft, entirely free from any inclination to delay. The profound insight gleaned from this experience? It is remarkably effortless to postpone tasks or endeavors that deep down you harbor a sense of resentment towards. Conversely, when you consciously elect to pursue a path that genuinely resonates with your inner desires, the act of taking action metamorphoses into a cherished privilege rather than a burdensome obligation. While deadlines undeniably possess a formidable capacity to motivate, for a substantial number of individuals, they regrettably morph into instruments of self-inflicted torment. The common scenario unfolds thus. One establishes an exceedingly rigorous deadline, subsequently fails to meet it, and then plunges into a debilitating spiral of guilt, ultimately leading to complete abandonment of the undertaking. In stark contrast, the wisdom derived from nature would advocate a different approach, suggesting, regard deadlines as gentle navigational aids. Should you happen to miss one, simply recalibrate your strategy. Under no circumstances should you surrender. Instead, establish more modest, adaptable timelines. Every single advancement, no matter how minute, contributes to your overall progress. Consider the illustrative case of Emma, who harbored the ambition of completing her novel by the onset of summer. She regrettably fell short of her objective and was on the brink of capitulation. However, instead of quitting, she ingeniously devised a system of smaller, weekly writing targets. Consequently, her book reached completion several months later, a testament to her perseverance, achieved through a methodical, albeit unhurried progression. Deadlines are intended to serve as catalysts for acceleration, not as instruments of destruction. It is imperative to extend compassion to oneself throughout the arduous ascent towards one's aspirations. By this point, you have confronted an additional 5 fundamental truths. Each of these revelations represents a significant stride away from the insidious snare of procrastination. Yet your journey of understanding is far from concluded. In the forthcoming 3rd segment, you will be privy to the conclusive quartet of truths. These particular insights revolve around the crucial acts of seeing endeavors through to their culmination, extending forgiveness for one's missteps, and ultimately attaining a profound sense of liberation. Do not venture away. The subsequent lesson possesses the singular power to illuminate all prior concepts, causing everything to fall into perfect alignment. Everyone, without exception, experiences setbacks. You will inevitably skip a day, regress into ingrained habits, or find yourself paralyzed when confronted with adversity. Such occurrences are an intrinsic facet of the human condition. Nevertheless, the teachings of nature would impart that the sole genuine failure lies in the refusal to recommence. Do not permit a solitary error to serve as a pretext for abandonment. Extend complete, swift, and unreserved forgiveness to yourself, devoid of any dramatic embellishments. However, it is equally important not to permit this act of forgiveness to devolve into an unearned indulgence. Extract valuable lessons from each misstep. Subsequently, gather your resolve and resolutely advance. Consider the narrative of Rena, who aspired to engage in daily morning meditation, but subsequently neglected the practice for an entire week. She was on the verge of relinquishing her goal until she recognized that a single week of lapse did not invalidate all her prior dedication. She granted herself absolution, but also ingeniously established a new behavioral cue. Her alarm clock, previously a mere wake-up device, transformed into her dedicated meditation prompt. Mistakes, in essence, function as valuable feedback mechanisms, not as ultimate condemnations. The overarching objective is continuous advancement, not flawlessness. Boredom frequently acts as the primary propellant for procrastination. However, NZ possessed an astute understanding that even the most formidable undertaking becomes more manageable if one can identify a single element, no matter how trivial, that ignites one's intellectual curiosity. If you find a task particularly odious, pose this question to yourself. What is one aspect of this task that remains unknown to me? Perhaps it involves acquiring a minor skill, mastering a novel technique, or discovering a method to inject an element of enjoyment into the process. The objective of curiosity is not necessarily to fundamentally alter the task itself. Its sole purpose is to reorient your perceptual focus. A pertinent illustration is Liam, who harbored a profound aversion to his accounting responsibilities. He imposed a personal challenge upon himself to unearth one unconventional fact related to his work each day. This minuscule spark of inquiry not only expedited the completion of his tasks, but also serendipitously led to the conception of a new venture for his own ancillary business. Curiosity is an intrinsic source of energy. A mere modicum of it is sufficient to transmute arduous drudgery into an engaging pursuit. The majority of individuals endeavor to self-motivate by visualizing the prospective rewards associated with completing a task: a more fulfilling career, an improved physique, an amplified sense of liberty. Yet nature's stratagem is even more incisive. Envision the potential costs you will incur if you persist in your current state. Project yourself 1 year hence, then 5 years from now, still trapped within the same cyclical patterns, reiterating identical justifications, enduring equivalent suffering, and grappling with identical regrets. Allow that compelling image to instill a sense of urgency that propels you into action. Consider the story of Carlos, who harbored the ambition of authoring a book, but deferred its commencement for several years. One evening, he vividly imagined his life at the age of 50, consumed by the wistful realization that he wished he had embarked on his writing journey earlier. The apprehension of future regret ultimately superseded the comforting allure of indefinite postponement. Do not solely pursue transient gratification. Actively flee from the pervasive discomfort of remaining stagnant. Regret, when channeled appropriately, can serve as a potent catalyst. Harness its power. An alarming number of individuals never bring their undertakings to fruition. They approach the precipice of completion, experience a depletion of resolve, and subsequently diverge from their original course. The strategic solution? Cultivate the practice of finishing smaller endeavors. Do not passively await a grand finale. Conclude your day with the accomplishment of a solitary task. A single page penned, a lone drawer organized, a solitary phone call made. Each minor completion systematically reinforces your identity as someone who follows through. The more frequently you complete small tasks, the more facile it becomes to accomplish larger objectives. A truthful anecdote: Leah grappled with an inability to complete anything she started. She instituted a strict personal rule: always conclude the day with something, however minuscule, fully accomplished. Within the span of a month, she successfully completed her first significant project in years. The act of finishing, even on a small scale, fundamentally reconfigures your neural pathways. You progressively evolve in an individual who consistently follows through, and that, in essence, is paramount. Now, you are enlightened. You have confronted 13 truths that most individuals assiduously evade throughout their entire existence. You have come to comprehend that procrastination functions as an indicator, not an inherent moral failing. That comfort, paradoxically, can be a confining enclosure, but that diligently cultivated rituals liberate you, that errors are not terminal, and that inquisitiveness, probity, and the consistent completion of small tasks possess the power to irrevocably transform everything. However, the efficacy of these truths is directly proportional to the deliberate actions you undertake. The majority will merely acknowledge them with a nod and then continue scrolling. Yet if you commit to integrating even one of these principles into your daily practice, your life will undergo a gradual metamorphosis, day by day, until a sudden, profound shift occurs. Nature held the conviction that the most exceptional human act is to live one's life with unblinking awareness, unburdened by the apprehension of effort, untroubled by the specter of imperfection. Do not merely acquire knowledge, undergo a profound transformation. The future you aspire to is already awaiting your arrival. It is yours for the taking, provided you persist in moving forward. Even when the path is arduous, even when the urge to retreat is overwhelming, perfection is not a prerequisite. You simply need to recommence repeatedly and relentlessly until your nascent self becomes your authentic, singular identity. Do not permit this pivotal moment to dissipate. This is your genesis. Nature's ultimate provocation, the 30-day procrastination rebellion. Having progressed this far, you are now situated within the top 1%. Most individuals never even register the presence of procrastination in their lives, let alone confront it directly. But what if you could distill all 13 of these truths into an unyielding habit and witness tangible change not at some indeterminate future point, but in the immediate present? This is nature's culminating challenge, a deserved reward for persevering to the conclusion. The 30-day rebellion. For the ensuing 30 days, designate a singular domain where procrastination currently exerts its dominance over your life. Each morning, consciously recall these fundamental truths, paying particular attention to the one that resonates most acutely or causes the most discomfort. Subsequently, prior to the noon hour, undertake the most infinitesimal action conceivable towards the realization of your objective. Not a monumental leap, but a mere microstep. On a daily basis, this might entail composing a single sentence, dispatching one email, venturing outdoors for a brief stroll, recording a voice memo, or confronting a minor apprehension. Meticulously track your actions. Should you miss a day, extend self-forgiveness and promptly recommence. No undue dramatization. Herein lies the ultimate recompense. After 30 days, you will discern two profound outcomes. Firstly, you will possess irrefutable evidence that personal transformation is indeed attainable for you, not exclusively for others. Secondly, you will perceive a tangible recalibration within your cognitive processes. The hesitant inner voice that previously urged, "Hold back," will gradually transform into an encouraging whisper. Begin now. You will then possess the driving force, authentic narratives. Individuals who have embraced this straightforward act of defiance recount successfully completing long, postponed endeavors, cultivating genuine self-assurance, and most crucially, demonstrating to themselves that they are no longer without agency. Should you take no other action based on this presentation, attempt this singular proposition. The natural order suggests that existence bestows its blessings upon those select individuals who repeatedly choose to take initiative. This serves as your acknowledgement for persevering until the conclusion. A renewed existence commences with a solitary action, reiterated persistently until the established pattern of former routines ultimately shatters. Your 30-day commitment commences this very moment.